All right. So let's just start by finding a comfortable posture. And how do we find a comfortable posture? Right. So somebody said earlier, like, let's get back into the body. That would be good. Yes, always. Usually we're not that much in our body. So just take a moment, actually check in with your body and notice. So what's your body needing right now? So that might not be the posture that you normally meditate in, but it might be something else. So especially, so if you feel really sleepy, you can consider actually doing this meditation standing. You can, maybe if your shoulders are tight, you could just take a moment and just like roll the shoulders or stretch, or the neck. Like I often have some neck tension. My body really appreciates that if I actually listen to that and just take a moment to stretch and release. Of course, you can also lie down. The problem with lying down is it can be really nice and it can be a little bit too relaxing. So then it becomes more nap meditation. So just not being on autopilot as we are setting up for meditation. And then closing the eyes if that feels comfortable, or just lowering your gaze. And starting by just checking in where the body is in contact with the ground, or the chair, the couch, whatever you're resting on right now. And then if the breath is a good anchor for you, finding the sensations of the breath in the body. So not a memory of meditating or a memory of the breath, but actually the felt, fresh experience of this breath. And you can do the same, you can choose sounds, do the same thing there, or just feeling into the contact points. And it also helps to have an intention for this sitting, like the intention to keep coming back, or the intention to invite kindness, or the intention to like move towards being mode instead of doing. So having an anchor for your awareness is really helpful for most folks at the start of a meditation. And then either staying there, or once the mind feels a little bit more stable and calm, then to soften and open up to even more receptivity. And just keep bringing the mind back. This is not a time for rumination, obsession, and thinking. And if you notice your mind doing that, really make a decision. Do you want to do that right now? And if not, then come back. Keep coming back with kindness and discipline to your anchor over and over and over. Just trusting that the mind will calm down if we give it space and we don't interfere in the ways we normally do. And now I want to invite you, if you care to reflect on something pleasant, something that you're grateful for or could be grateful for. Like maybe something from this week or from the previous week around the Thanksgiving week. You know, a lot of people saw family again for the first time since the start of the pandemic in person. And so maybe seeing where there are moments, maybe even very small moments of joy, of connection, of enjoyment. Even if it wasn't perfect. And then maybe taking these moments and putting them kind of as if there were pearls into a bowl or a basket where you're collecting pearls. And this bowl of pearls can be a resource for you, to which you can keep adding. And now, if this time of year is causing stress to you, if you like, take a moment and reflect on what do you need? What do you need for these next weeks? What would be supportive? And maybe reflecting on one small thing that you could invite in or implement to move through these weeks with maybe a little bit more calm and ease. It could be something like getting up 10 minutes earlier to invite more ease into your morning, or to practice a little bit longer. Maybe adding a short walk midday, being outside. Or maybe giving yourself permission to not do it perfectly, to not be perfect, or to say no to something that feels just too much. And then just dropping all thinking, reflecting, thoughts and concepts, and just coming back to just the breath, just the body in this moment. And then in another minute or so, we'll be ending our practice. You're taking your time to end and transition. So I was thinking that if you like, for those of you who like to stay on for the breakout rooms later, that might be something that you could share in your group, like anything that came up around these reflections at the end. Right. So yeah, I said I would introduce myself again. So for those of you who have joined in the meantime, so my name is Christiana Wolf, and I am a senior teacher at InsightLA. I actually have been with InsightLA. I joined Trudy before like we had anything really. I joined her when InsightLA was just 6 months old, and which was about the age of my oldest daughter. So and we had just moved to LA from Germany, from Berlin, where I'm from. And I mean, that's yeah, I don't want to go into a whole story. But so I've been with InsightLA for a really long time. And so my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'm calling in today I'm in Los Angeles, which is unceded Tongva land. Yeah, so very happy to be here. That was very last minute. You probably, Trudy, for those of you who are here who are regulars, Trudy probably told you that Guru will be here teaching Guru Singh next week. And Trudy had that just mixed up. She thought, yeah, anyway. So, and I had time, and which is unusual on Sunday mornings, but I did have time today. So I'm very happy to be here. So what I was actually thinking about for today, I know like Trudy talked, she shared the loss of her dear friends with you last time. But before that, she started to unpack the Anapanasati Sutta with you, which is just a wonderful teaching. But she said, you can teach whatever, right? So like, if you're asking somebody last minute, that's like the offer that you make. It's just like, you don't have to prepare, just teach anything, just come in. So what I was thinking is actually a topic that I've been thinking about quite a lot recently, which is I don't know, kind of the direction, and maybe I should say like another word. So like, I'm also like a Buddhist teacher. So I'm a Vipassana teacher, and I was trained through Spirit Rock and IMS. But I'm also a mindfulness teacher and a mindfulness teacher trainer. So I'm an MBSR teacher trainer. And I know some of you here actually have taken MBSR with me. And also mindful self-compassion teacher. So I'm kind of straddling both worlds, which fits me really well. But what I'm seeing really is that seems to be quite a focus, and I think a misperception, that mindfulness is about relaxation. And which in a way, right? So why do people come? Right? So like most people, or a lot of people, and I don't know about you, like who start a practice, so that comes through the door of mindfulness, they come because either they want two things. They want to reduce their stress, and they want to feel more relaxed. Yeah, anybody here like in that category when you first came? Yeah, right, of course. So, and then if we say like, all right, so let's remember that like mindfulness actually is rooted in the Buddha's teaching. So let's just be curious. So what did the Buddha teach relaxation? People go like, oh, what? Wait, what? Right? And so that's something actually I want to explore a little bit here with you, because I think what has happened is that because so many people want to come because they want to feel more relaxed, and nothing wrong with that, right? So we're stressed, we want to feel more relaxed, so we think that's what we want. And so in a way, if we say like the like reducing your stress part, we could translate that into reducing dukkha, right? Reducing suffering. And it was funny. So like, and I will tell like some stories about the origin of MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and Jon Kabat-Zinn. So once, so we have this joke, I say like, it should have been called like mindfulness-based dukkha reduction, but of course nobody would have known what that means, so we couldn't use that. And of course, at the core of the secular mindfulness teachings is don't use vernacular, right? So that was really like one of the huge insights of Jon Kabat-Zinn, that he says, if we keep like throwing out these Buddhist terms, like a lot of people are not interested in that. They don't want to become Buddhists, right? They want to suffer less. They want to have less stress. And so let's just take that out. Let's just use a language that people can understand. So stress, and you're probably aware that stress is one of the translations of dukkha, right? So dukkha could be suffering, it could be pain, it can be stress, it can be the unsatisfactory of life. But right, so dukkha, that is like first, is like dukkha is the first noble truth. So core, huge Buddhist core teaching. And dukkha is also the first mark of the 3 marks of existence. Right? If you care to pay any attention to life, you notice that there's suffering. Duh, right? I mean, it feels like that's not Buddhist. It's just like living a human life, isn't it? Just like we notice there's suffering. Doesn't mean there's only suffering, but there's suffering, right? First noble truth. So mindfulness-based dukkha reduction, that didn't fly so well. So what was really interesting, so in the first years, so Jon Kabat-Zinn, it was actually called the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction and Relaxation Clinic for the first few years, or program, can't remember exactly, right? So they had the word relaxation in there. And then they started teaching it. And then, of course, what they noticed is people came because they wanted to feel relaxed, which is what we're still seeing today, probably for different reasons, right? I think today it is more because there are like all kinds of meditations out there. And a lot of really do focus on relaxation, right? We see that a lot when we train clinicians, that they have this really, we call that interference, interference with techniques that they've learned before. For example, like the progressive muscle relaxation works fabulously, right? And so they're like, even if you go to like, if you're mental health care provider, you probably like have heard that people offer clinics of like, right, we do like progressive muscle relaxation and mindfulness. And so no wonder that people get really confused. And with the start of all the apps, right? So many apps really focus on like relaxation. Give me 10 minutes of your time and I make sure you're more relaxed and we meditate together. So there's a lot of confusion around that. But coming back to the mindfulness-based stress reduction and relaxation clinic. So after a couple of years, Jon Kabat-Zinn decided to take the relaxation part out of the name, because he noticed that people get really fixated on that, on the relaxation part, to the point where they not only changed the name, but they actually purged all their material of the word relaxation. Isn't that interesting? Because they wanted to be super clear. This is not about relaxation. There's nothing wrong with relaxation. And if you feel more relaxed, that's great. But so one of the reasons is, of course, like, have you ever tried to force yourself to be relaxed? Good luck, right? It's a little bit like as if you're trying to force yourself to fall asleep. That's not how that works, right? And so Jon Kabat-Zinn, he has like this teaching or joke or whatever, or saying that he says, we're not trying to fall asleep, we're trying to fall awake. Because that is actually what the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught falling awake, not falling asleep. And then what we also, so there are like different strands here. So one strand is really the, we can't make ourselves be relaxed, just like we can't make ourselves fall asleep. And what is also really interesting is really the rise of sleep programs that use mindfulness. And so, and if you're like, you probably, I don't know, anybody uses meditation to fall asleep? Very common, right? So you don't have to be shy. Like, I know a lot of people use that. And like to the point where I will even, so in my MBSR classes, of course, a lot of people with insomnia come, right? Insomnia, like we have huge numbers of insomnia in this country and around the world. Like a lot of people have a hard time either falling asleep or staying asleep. And of course, so stress is one of the major contributors of insomnia. And of course, it's way more complex. There are a lot of different factors that play into that. But a lot of people, so when they come to and learn meditation or they learn mindfulness, is they notice that they sleep better. And to the point where I will, so like the first practice that people do in MBSR is the body scan, and really long body scan, like not just like, oh, I want to feel nice 10-minute kind of meditation. No, you do like a 45-minute body scan, which is really long. And so when we tell people, do that in the middle of the night when you can't go back to, and a lot of that works for a lot of people. And why is that? Because we get out of the mind, because where's the mind when we can't fall asleep? Like we're like, the mind's doing some version of that usually, right? So how do we get out of this? Is by getting back into the body. And a body scan actually works fabulously for that. And we kind of have that joke, it's like you can only win, right? So either you fall back asleep, that's a win, or you've done your body scan for the day. Also a win, right? So you can do that. But so, and to the point, and there's even like a mindfulness that there are all these spin-offs of MBSR now. So 8-week classes that focus on other issues, let's say. And there is one for insomnia. So there is a mindfulness-based program for insomnia, and they have really good data. And if I have time later, I have to just like watch my time a little bit, I can share a little bit more about that program with you. But the core point here really is for me is to look a little bit more at the relaxation. So if it's not about relaxation, so what basically is relaxation? Relaxation is kind of, what is relaxation? Like, if you go like, what is relaxation? So we can say what it is when we feel it, but if you would have to describe it, right? So what is that for you? So it's like in a way, a lot of people will say it's like letting down my guards. And there's an unwinding, a muscular and a mental unwinding. And it is, if you think about it, relaxation is like on the slope of falling asleep. And the problem with that is, so again, like if you're suffering from insomnia, that might not be a problem at all because that's what you're after. But in the Buddhist teachings, so I know probably most of you are familiar with the 5 hindrances. Yes? No? Okay, so I repeat it. So 5 hindrances is a really important core teaching. It's listed under the 4th foundation of mindfulness. And the 5 hindrances is basically this idea that the mind in itself is clear and luminous. So we say like the mind is like the blue sky. And the hindrances are like the weather patterns that obscure this clear blue sky. And then there are like 5 patterns that they show up in every meditation, but they also show up in everyday life. And they show up because this is how our brain works, right? So like hearing about the teachings about the 5 hindrances can be hugely relieving because usually we identify with these hindrances and then we blame it on our times. Just I know it's not about the times. This is a list that the Buddha already listed like 25 or 2600 years ago. And so the 5 hindrances are the first one, so they kind of go a little bit like the first 2 each go in pairs. And the first pair is, or the first one is wanting something or desire mind, wanting mind, right? And then it has an opposite. It's like not wanting mind. So anybody has had any of this today in your meditation? So either wanting something, like a desire, like thinking like, ooh, my lunch later or whatever, right? So it has this like leaning forward, this, right? And then we have the opposite of that, which is like not wanting something. Anybody has had that today? Just like, you don't want whatever, you don't want that back pain, you don't want what's going on in the world right now. You don't want, I mean, like it's too cold in the room. It can be anything, but it's just like, it has this, like, often we feel that it as muscle tension. It's just like, ooh, I'm just trying to push this and keep this away from me. So those are the first 2 pairs. And then the next one, they're really interesting. And this is really like where I want to come back to our topic. So the next 2 is, so then we have the hindrances of sleepiness. Or beautiful translation, sloth and torpor, or lethargy. Anybody's had anything of that today? Or are you familiar with that? Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Okay, so if you've been meditating for a while, you know these hindrances all really well, right? So that's a hindrance, actually. So interesting, right? So that's why maybe people come for, do they come for sloth and torpor? Not really, right? They just want to sleep better. Because sloth and torpor, it's actually not a really pleasant sensation. It's like moving through molasses, just like, ooh, right? So it's like, ooh, and I'm not really here and I'm fighting and it's hard. And then we have the opposite. So for the 4th hindrance is the opposite of that, which is restlessness. Restlessness, and there's the restlessness of the body. It's like, oh, I can't sit still. It's really, right? So that kind of feeling. Or it's restlessness of the mind. So the hamster wheel. the wheels spinning, and it often comes in a form of worry. So worry is often a sign actually of mental restlessness. And so you see the opposites of that, right? And very often, so if any of you has ever been on a meditation retreat, like it's so typical. That's like what's going on for the first few days of people on a silent meditation retreat. We're just flip-flopping back and forth between being sleepy and then being really restless. And we go like, why am I doing this? Why am I paying for this? And we have to see that the mind actually needs to calm down and settle, but not in a way of being more relaxed, right? So like we often talk about the balancing. Mindfulness is actually a balancing factor of all of this. It's like not too much, not too little. So like kind of Goldilocks in between. And then to see what is that actually that lies in the middle. And then just for completion's sake, so the fifth hindrance is doubt. And doubt is really a tricky one, right? Because with doubt, we have to be clear that doubt is not kind of believing everything that's been given to us. And so it has kind of the really a healthy part, or a healthy, like the healthy quality is what we call wise discernment. Wise discernment is just like, no, you need to check this for your own experience, right? So it's not just because I tell you. And then there is the hindrance of doubt. And the way like people often say, so how do I know it's like doubt or it's wise discernment? It's like, so all the hindrances, they're kind of colored glasses. So when we're when we're caught by any of those hindrances, it's like we're wearing colored glasses. I was on a hike last weekend, and then my daughter was wearing orange colored glasses. And I took her glasses at some point of the hike, and I thought like, whoa, it's really different. The greens are completely different. The sky is completely different. And if you've ever had like colored glasses, you start to like this jolt of like, whoa, this is different, goes away. Because then it starts to feel normal. And it's the same thing with the hindrances, because the sneaky thing about the hindrances is they will always make sense, because they kind of have access to your thinking. So if you're in the thralls of desire, you have very pleasant, desirable thoughts, right? If you're in the thralls of not wanting, it totally makes sense. It totally makes sense that you don't like what is here and you want to get rid of it. So, but where we notice that it's a hindrance, it's usually not just one thing. So sometimes it can be really helpful to go like, okay, I wonder if this is a hindrance. And then look at something else. And chances are you will also, it's more likely that you will also desire something like that, or you won't like something like this, what you're looking at. So just look in the other direction, and usually the flavor stays. So that's usually a good sign. So how are we working with the hindrances in general? We know that they're there. This is what they are. We name them, right? We see them, we name them, and then we just don't do anything with it. And yes, there are all these lists of what we can do with the hindrances, but that often, and especially in the beginning, we use them as another way of not wanting. Right, so I don't want the hindrances of desire, or usually we like that one. So let's use another one. I don't want the hindrance of sloth and torpor. And so now I don't only have sloth and torpor in my system, I also have now not wanting in my system. Do you see that? It's just like, let's not do that. And it's unpleasant often. But you've been probably practicing long enough to know it's like, it's not about avoiding unpleasant. It's actually becoming more familiar with saying like, yeah, I prefer this would be different right now, but it's okay, right? And I can be with this in this moment. So those are the 5 hindrances. And we see that we have the hindrances, the hindrance of sloth and torpor and sleepiness. So what we also practice with the hindrances is we notice their presence and we notice their absence. That's also a core practice instruction from the Buddha, that we're not only noticing when something is there, and we really feel, oh, this is what it feels like to be sleepy, to be restless, to be anxious, whatever that is. And to notice, what does it feel like when sleepiness, lethargy are gone? And what we are practicing for is wakefulness, right? I don't know if you know the teaching. So when the Buddha gained enlightenment, there's like this story. So he started walking because I don't know if you remember the story, but he left his best practice friends because at some point they just said, oh, you're not practicing right. You're just whatever you're doing, you do it wrong, basically. And the Buddha was so convinced, it's just like, no, like we have to try something else, that he left them. So he was on his way back to his friends. And then there was like kind of the first teaching and like we joining with his friends, which we call like turning the wheel. But on his way, he met what was that? I think whatever it was, doesn't matter. Like he met somebody, and that person looked at the Buddha and saw the Buddha coming and was just like, what's that? Is that a human being? Is that a God? Like, wow, what is there? There was something so different about this being. And then he stopped the Buddha and said, who are you? Well, what are you? And what did the Buddha say? He said, I am awake. I am awake. And that is what the Buddha is teaching. He's teaching falling awake, not falling asleep. He's teaching falling awake. And so what we're practicing for, and I'm sure you've had moments in your meditation of like being very much at ease, very calm, and very awake. But it's not this like that kind of awakeness, right? So like the caffeinated awakeness or the nervous awakeness or the stressed awakeness. But there is this balance between ease or calm and being awake. And that actually feels immensely pleasant. So when we look at, so like we have the teachings of the 5 hindrances, but we also have the teachings of the 7 factors of, do you know what the 7 factors of what are? 7 factors of awakening. Ta-da! Right here we have them again, right? So we want to wake up, right? So the factors of awakening, actually I have to look at that list here right now. So make sure I'm not missing one. So we have mindfulness, and then we have investigation or curiosity. So what's the energy of curiosity? Is that sleepy? Curiosity is not sleepy, is it? Curiosity has this like, wait, what is this? What is this? So I think curiosity, right? So it already has this quality of just like showing up and bringing up energy in it. And then the third factor of enlightenment is energy, virya. This is just like, right? So they're like, sometimes the way that we're teaching the 7 factors are like in that order, so that one follows out of the next, but they can come up in any order and they actually support each other. But so if we can be curious, and this is like, I'm sure you've heard this before, right? When you're like sleepy and you go like, what am I doing? Right? Or when I'm bored in a meditation because I can't stand it, it's so boring. Then you probably have heard the instructions to say, can you be curious about it? Instead of fighting your experience, can you turn towards it and say, what is that? What's boredom? How does boredom show up in my system? How does sleepiness show up in my system? And very often, of course, what happens is as soon as you do that, like poof, boredom is gone or sleepiness is gone, which of course, that's not why we're doing it, remember? So not doing that out of aversion, but often as we become curious, there's more energy. And then it changes. And we always think it's like, oh, I could be fine if that would go away or if that would change. And so what we see more is it actually is really so much more about our attitude, right? How's our relationship to the experience that is here in this moment? And then what comes out of that very naturally is joy. Out of this, like, right, this being like present, being curious, having more energy, very naturally a joy arises. Again, it has nothing to do with what's going on outside. That's a fruit of practice. That is a fruit of practice. And then out of this arises calm or tranquility, which sometimes is, and so this is really interesting, or at least that's for me, I think that's like fascinating. So the word for that is passaddhi. And passaddhi is sometimes translated as relaxation. It's not relaxation. It's calm. It's tranquility. It is this easeful awakeness. And as I was just like reading around a little bit, like one Buddhist teacher said, it's like, do you all know the emoji like with the halo? That is what passaddhi is, right? So this is like what is like wakeful ease is like, and so like depending on like if you go like whatever on Apple or on WhatsApp, whatever, it's like most of the time that person has their eyes open, but there's actually that emoji, but you can find an emoji like where that person is meditating. Because so we have this ease, we have the joy, and then now we have calm in the system. And then with this calm and the concentration, that's really important because that helps us, right? All of that is kind of gathering the mind and it helps us to be more concentrated, which means it's easier to be with whatever we place the attention on. Remember, we did in a meditation earlier today. Like, can you be with the breath? So as we're practicing or focusing more on the 7 factors, right? And again, if you've been on retreat, you know that that's a natural unfolding of the path. You have more moments. So like you gain momentum so that this whole like gathering and collecting of the mind becomes effortless or more effortless. And then the last factor is equanimity. Another really, really important factor or quality of mind where like, that's actually why a lot of people come. If you ask people, right, so they want relaxation when they come to practice, but what they actually want is peace of mind. They say, if I can, I want this to go away. But if I can't make this go away, I want to be okay with that. Isn't that kind of how we would like to live our lives, right? If I can make this unpleasant or painful thing, if I can make it go away, that would be my first choice. But we also know how often this goes away and we're still not peaceful. We think if this would only happen, or if this would only change and go away, then I would be happy. I think we're all old enough to know that's not how that works. So I will read you a short passage from about this, like the kind of state, whatever, the energy, the factor of passaddhi, or calm. So when restlessness and torpor both disappear, so those are the two hindrances of restlessness and sloth and torpor, and the mind suddenly fixes on a single thing in the absence of sleep and restlessness, then lightness occurs. And then that's describes, like, for some, the sensation begins at the top of the head, whereas for others, it originates in the soles of the feet. And when lightness begins at the top of the head feels fresh and cool, as if cream were being gently poured over it, which might or might not be a pleasant image for you. And he says that some Buddhists and Taoists call this internal baptism. And the sensation circulates throughout the entire body. The mind is rested, the body is relaxed, and one feels so soft and flexible that it often seems as if the bones themselves have dissolved. And then it is natural for the body to become as straight as a pine tree. The mind is clear, and there are no feelings of restlessness or torpor in response to external surroundings. And one experiences a natural state of joy. And just to throw one more Buddhist context at you. So some of you might be familiar with the absorption states, the jhanic states. And some people really training really, really hard to get in these absorption states. And we're trying to focus away from that because it can just be another thing we can be lost in with our wanting mind. Can definitely speak from my own experience here because it feels so nice. And so there are these absorption states, and then there are all these mind factors that go into that. But there is one state which is right before we kind of enter the absorption stage, which is called access concentration. And access concentration is really, or some teachers compare the state of calm alertness with access concentration. And that is some things I've been referring to retreats, and you go like, oh, I don't want to go on a retreat. I can't go on a retreat, or that's not my practice. So totally hear you. But access concentration is a state that is actually quite easy to move into when we're meditating in everyday life. So if you have a regular meditation practice, and of course it always goes up and down, and there are droughts and there are full practice times, but access concentration really is this, like suddenly the hindrances start to fall away. Or we just go like, oh, now it's easier to stay with whatever my mind or whatever I want my mind to stay with. And so just looking at times, I want to finish up my thoughts here for today. But really, so what I would love for you to take away is really, it's not about relaxation, but it's about waking up. And that this process of waking up to your life and to the present moment experience is actually something that is deeply pleasurable. And it's not dependent on what you are experiencing in that moment. It's about how the mind relates to that. All right, so I'll be stopping here. And Heather, give me a moment to read your